That's fair. You know, I feel like that should sort of be the answer that you give just in general. And I know that you'll answer that question a million times. But there's no way that you can look at this situation and look at the fan. All right, so at 1-6, this season is seemingly over, right? Stranger things have happened, but it's a very highly unlikely chance that the Carolina Panthers are going to make the playoffs or even be competitive at this point, right? So it begs the question, why not go back to Bryce Young? Why not go back and see what you have in this young man to see if he can be a guy that you could turn around and, it could turn into something that could be positive for you moving forward, or at least, if nothing else, you make him as, attractive a free agent trade as you possibly can, right? But there's something to me that's weird. It almost feels like when Dave is asked these questions that he gets a little defensive, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me outside of like, and look, I guess on some level it does make a little bit of sense because you're being asked these questions like all the time, and it's probably not just with the media. When he's asked these questions between other players in the organization, former players, things like that, other staffers possibly. Who knows? But it did seem kind of weird in the press conference that he had, the way that he answered this question. So I'm going to play this clip, and I just want to check it out with you guys, and let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel about just the way that this question was answered. It just seems a little different than before.
Dave, just follow up on last thing on the quarterback situation. I think there's a faction of people out there that are like, because you guys haven't put Bryce back in, that you've lost confidence in him. And I just wanted you to address that. Have you guys lost confidence in him?
This is about Andy Dalton. This is about playing the Broncos. This is about taking strides with our group that we have in, and that's really where the focus is.
I'm going to tell you, up until this point, watching him in the media, I have not seen him answer a question like that. That looked like, hey, man, I am tired of you guys talking about this quarterback situation. But, Dave, how can we not? It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And it makes me think, like, I really spent some time thinking about this. Shout out to some good friends of mine that I've talked to on the phone over the last few days about this situation specifically. It feels to me like there's something more here than what's being presented. Much more here, right? I don't think that this is just about quarterback play. Now, when you look at Bryce, okay, let me say this. And I don't want to put this out here because there's no fact behind this, right? But I am curious about something, right? There was a time last year where I heard a story, and I can't confirm it because I don't know the source, right? It was just one of those things that kind of floats out into the ethos, right? You see it on Twitter or something like that, and you're just like, wow, or X rather, and you're like, man, is there any validity to this? But there was this whole thing about Frank Reich and Bryce Young's wristband. Like, he wanted him to wear a wristband, and I guess Bryce didn't really want to wear a wristband, and who knows why, right? Maybe he didn't feel comfortable with it. Maybe he felt like mentally he had all the, faculties to be able to remember, everything he needed to remember as far as like his plays, checks, and things like that. I don't know. But this just feels to me like, remember the whole Robert Griffin thing with his dad? Robert comes back in his second year, like after being injured, and like, his dad's talking to the, at the time Redskins facility or team coaches or whatever like that, saying like, he really sees himself in the like of like Peyton Manning, don't really want to do a whole lot of the RPO stuff and the read option, all that kind of stuff. We'd really like to, get him in the pocket, sit back there. I'm like, well, that's not your game, right? And like things just kind of fell apart from there. I mean, obviously injury hindered him like crazy, but it was just a whole like, hey, why would you want to go away from something that you had some success with? Like, you won Rookie of the Year despite the issues that you had and the injuries that you had, right? So like when you see just how bad, I mean, I know it looked awful. I'm gonna be the first to say it, right? I'm a Bryce supporter, but the tape is the tape. But man, 2 games, and like you're putting this guy in when the game's completely out of reach as to not get your starter hurt, which I guess sort of makes sense. But when you think about just how like unprecedented this is, man, like when you think about how much we gave up to get this guy, it just feels weird to see him being treated like this, right? To not even, unless there's a larger plan at play. It feels to me like this is likely going to be the end of Bryce Young in Carolina. I'm pretty sure the writing's on the wall when it comes to that, especially when you hear answers like this. But at the same time, could there be, I mean, it's possible that there could be some sort of deeper plan at play or whatever like that. Like, hey, we really truly want to develop this guy. We really truly want to sit him down. There's some things that you see on Bryce Young's tape, even from college, right? Bailing out of clean pockets. There was a few times like, I know a lot of people talk about the Green Bay game. Really, the Miami game is the tape to really watch, to see where he really set his feet in the pocket, set his, feet or whatever, went through his progressions, pushed the ball down the field as much as he possibly could, right? Given his circumstances and really his arm strength, if we're just being real. But like, you could see in those moments, like, okay, things quieted down a little bit. Like, I know you have the playmaker in you, but I need you to quiet down to the point where you can make a throw and get smoked when you make it, right? And we saw that. Crossing route to Adam Thielen. Boom. Get smoked in that Miami game, right? And we saw it a couple times last year, but this year it's gone, right? This year, clearly there's a confidence issue, whether it's I don't understand the, plays, whether I'm calling the wrong, setting the wrong protections. Who knows, right? The ball watchers know. I don't claim to be that guy. But the point is that there's clearly something there. It's much more, to me anyway, than just the film.
And that's what all I can give you right now.
Why do you think Andy still gives you the best chance?
Just in terms of how the progression of what we've been doing offensively, I think that, if you look at the collection of the games he's played, there's been some really good situational passing that have come out of it. We've had some explosive plays come out of it. The offenses ran smoothly for the most part, and I'd love for us as a group, Andy included, to find a way to finish, and yesterday we didn't have a finish up. The game got out of hand so quickly, but the week before, I think that's where we were headed. But now again, we have to address just fundamental execution, breaking the huddle, lining up properly, and finishing those plays.
Fundamental execution is crazy when you talk about, look, I know I'm just a commenter. I'm just a content creator. You know what I'm saying? But, on the smallest level for you and I and our jobs and everything like that, like when you start talking about fundamental execution, that's effort. That's you not showing up to work on time. That's you complaining. Like I work at a place that, God bless the guys, they're cool. But like these guys, they complain a lot, and it's just like, man, you know how fortunate you are to be able to live in a society where you can work, but that's another conversation for another day. But the point is like, we're talking effort, right? And really culture. But your culture setters, like, yeah, your coach can kind of do some of that, but your culture setters are your guys in the locker room. And unfortunately, and this is where I kind of give Dave some bail, right? You don't plan for guys like Derrick Brown. I mean, Derrick Brown's been healthy pretty much, since his rookie season. So you don't plan for a guy like him to be out, right? You don't plan for a Josie Jewell. You don't plan for Shaq Thompson, Jadeveon Clowney, Adam Thielen, Tommy Tremble. You don't plan for guys like this to get hurt and to be out. That's pretty much our nucleus, right? When you look at last year, guys who made plays, outside of Jadeveon Clowney, who was a new addition, these are guys that have been the nucleus on the Carolina Panthers, if you want to call it that, right? It's not been great, but it's hard to, especially when you start playing rookies and you got guys that are, kind of cast offs from different situations, and in respect to, guys like Deontay Johnson, I'm not trying to say he's a cast off necessarily, but what I am saying is that, you weren't part of this nucleus to begin with. Plus, he don't really strike me as a guy that is kind of like he seems like someone that's like, hey, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do my job at the highest level, but I ain't with all that, talking and trying to lead and all that. Like, whatever, And it just feels like when it comes to effort, there's some void there, at least in certain position groups. It don't feel like that way on the offensive line. And you can look at guys like Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt to thank for that. So,
Dave, with Mariota going in and doing what he did yesterday, is there a succinct explanation to the defensive struggles after you've watched the tape?
All the things that we've addressed already. It's the same deal, it's stopping the run game, being really focused there, and then just communication on the back end and continuing to, play together and make sure we pass those matches off and get the quarterback down. We had a couple of good rushes. We didn't get the quarterback down, and both quarterbacks made plays by extending it. So,
man, do you know how demoralizing that was? If I'm not mistaken, correct me if you can, was not the Marcus Mariota play where he was falling and threw the ball, like he was being sacked and threw the ball and it got picked off. Wasn't that against us? Talk about get back. Goodness.
Finding a way to make sure that when we have those ops that we get the guy down.
Dave, early in the game, you had a kind of a throwback wide receiver screen set up for Xavier.
Yeah.
What happened on that? You know, obviously the throw was poor, but where did that break down?
Started off with the protection breakdown on the right side. Andy had a guy in his lap well before we're ready to set up to throw the screen. I thought Andy did a great job getting the ball off with the amount of time he had available. And at that point right there, it was like, you know, the emergency throw. We had it set up. If there was a chance we could get that ball into Xavier's hands, it was going to be a big play. But it all started with the protection up front.
Saw a similar play in the Chargers game, I believe. Bryce Young to Adam Thielen. That response was a whole lot different. I'll just say that. I'm just saying. And you know, I want to salute Vashti. Salute to Vashti from Carolina Blitz, because she's getting ready to ask a question that really kind of wraps up exactly my thoughts when it comes to the questions about Bryce.
Given what the organization gave up for Bryce, you do understand the questions regarding his status with the franchise, right?
Absolutely, completely sensitive to the questions, and they're not unfounded and unbased. But from my perspective, I'm trying to get a team to continue to take strides and take steps, and that's where my focus has to be. It has to be on getting Andy to play his best football with this group, a group that has showed promises, and then a group that has showed to struggle, and like, what is those struggles, and what can I do as a coach to put ourselves in the best situation? So that's really where I can focus my energy on.
That's fair. You know, I feel like that should sort of be the answer that you give just in general. And I know that you'll answer that question a million times. But there's no way that you can look at this situation and look at the fan base and, like, look, regardless of where you stand on Bryce Young, right? What Vashti said was point blank. What you gave up to get him, not you, Dave Canales, because you weren't here, but what we gave up to get him, that cost. How can we just look at this and say, like, hey, man, we own Andy Dalton, on to Denver, whatever, and not at least give some sort of, like, you know, give us something, man. Like, have you lost confidence in him? Are you building confidence? Is there a plan? We keep hearing about development. Like, I mean, I feel like he's open to talk about everything but that. And to me, I feel like that's the most important thing. Why is it the most important thing? Because if this guy doesn't play and we still end up going, you know, flaming out for the rest of the year, guess what Carolina's doing at the top of the draft? You are not going to get anywhere in this league without a quarterback. Would I do that? No. Do I like Shedeur Sanders? Yeah. Do I think Cam Ward might be a guy? Maybe. Is Carson Beck a dude? I don't know. But I would personally like to take a Abdul Carter, a James Pierce, a Nick Skirton, somebody that can create a pass rush, because the pass rush here has been absolutely awful. And at some point, we have got to start developing and building a culture and not just retreading quarterbacks like crazy. I'm telling you, we're in an interesting spot, man. It's tough. It is tough to be a fan of this team. It really is. You know, I saw that clip of Steph Curry last night on ESPN. I think it was like halftime of the Ravens and Baltimore game, or it might have even been at the end of the game. I don't remember exactly. But, you know, he says, go Panthers, and, you know, Scott Van Pelt said, good luck with that, right? And I'm like, but I like the fact that he's like us. You know, he's diehard, you know, sticking with the team, good or bad, right? I mean, we've seen turnarounds. Minnesota had a pretty good turnaround, pretty quick turnaround, you know? So it's not impossible. But you just at least want to see or get some sort of credence to what's going on to know. And I mean, I know that's just us as fans. Like, they got a plan. They talking about this inside. So when he talks about, like, Brant and Dan, you know, going through this process, like, they're having these conversations. But, man, give us something. Give us something. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, let me know what you think below. Make sure to comment, rate, subscribe. My name is John Farmer from the One Carolina Show. I'm back, y'all. Keep pounding.